Welcome to Peak Talent, the podcast that explores what really makes the difference on a journey to success and high performance. I meet with leaders and athletes to discuss their leadership, lessons learned, and advice. I'm Dani Trudel, and my goal is to bring you insightful conversations that invite you to see your journey and leadership in a new light while uncovering the secrets and contagious inspiration of surpassing yourself. In this episode, I'm excited to welcome Susan Handrigan, an entrepreneur and leader who seamlessly blends the worlds of business, sports, and mental wellness. Susan is a lifelong athlete and a dedicated mother of two competitive athletes. I wanted to dive into the mindset that drives her success, the insights into her journey, her deep commitment to sport and mental wellness, her approach to balance, and her thoughts for the future. We'll begin with a brief look at the challenges she navigates in the financial world and what to be mindful of. Together, we'll explore how she applies the lessons from sports to business, leadership, and advocacy, navigating success from the field to the boardroom. Susan co-founded Handrigan and Associates in 2018, a boutique advisory firm focused on strategic transformation in manufacturing, agri-food, and digital innovation. In 2020, she launched Head to Core, a nonprofit dedicated to improving mental health through sports. With over 25 years of experience in the financial sector, a degree in applied economics and mathematics from Queen's University, Susan is also a sought-after board member in both the public and private sectors. Beyond her career in finance, Susan is deeply immersed in sports. She's a skier and an avid runner, competing in 2-3 races per year. She coaches soccer and advocates for the mental health of youth athletes. As a mother of two competitive athletes, both skiers and soccer or football players, Susan's life reflects her commitment to both family and sports. I met Susan in 2024 during the pilot of my Propel program with the FC Anjou U17 girls team, where she was a coach and manager of the team, and I was the mental preparation coach and overall program leader. I'm excited to share her story with you. Happy listening. Hi, Susan. Welcome to the Peak Talent Podcast.
Thank you, Dani. It's great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you. So, Susan, you're an entrepreneur, an investor, a soccer coach, an athlete, a mother, and more recently, the founder of a non-for-profit organization, which is focused on mental health in sports.
Yes.
Wow. Amazing. Now,
It
before
seems
diving,
amazing to
sorry?
say it. It seems amazing when you say it like that, but it's just life.
Well, you are involved in so many different things and you juggle so many things, and it's pretty impressive. So it's good to have someone tell you sometimes.
Yeah, thank you.
So before diving into your journey, I'd like us to take a moment just to get your perspective on what do you see are the key issues facing organizations you collaborate with in 2025? What do you see are these emerging trends impacting what talent and leaders have to do?
Um, there's lots of things, and I think you would depend on which industry, but I'll break it down because we know each other from soccer. So I always try to break it down and explain to people in terms that we already know or we already share in common. So I would say the three biggest things facing my clients, and mostly what I do are buy and sell companies. So I'll advise clients to help them prepare their company for sale, or when they're actually in a sale mandate, or if they're buying companies. So it's not rocket science. It's the same things today as it would be any other day. So your interest rates in your labor pool, which are huge. But now we have this other little thing that, got thrown our world upside down over the weekend, which are tariffs. So if you look at it like a soccer game, the interest rates, well, first of all, the labor are like our players, right? So whoever's there, you kind of want to have the best players in your team every day, but you need the versatile players on your bench So if anything happens, you can move them back in. It's the same thing for all the companies that I advise. And the talent pool and the labor pool is getting lower and lower. And as you know, because we've seen it this summer, so are the number of the athletes as you start to be more and more competitive. It's the same thing with business. So in that sense, labor and our team is the same thing. Then there's the interest rates, which I say is like all those uncontrollable variables in a soccer game. Like you can't control the weather, you can't control the terrain that you're playing on, you can't control the refs calls. Those are like interest rates. Sometimes they make a difference. You can have a plan to impact. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. So you kind of have to play around with those interest rates. For my clients, it's like when they get a loan, it's like that. If they're trying to sell their company or have their company financed, the interest rates play a huge rate on what the value of that company is. And then you have the tariffs. And the tariffs for us right now is like having your main goalie and your backup goalie both hurt. Sure, you can put someone into play, but the whole dynamic on the field has changed. And so that's what I think my clients are going to be facing right now. And especially some of the mandates that we have in there that have 50 or 60% of their sales to the US or vice versa, they buy from the US. Wow. I can't imagine what they're going through today. And I can't imagine what the rest of my phone calls are going to be like this week as we start to see this play out.
I really love the analogy you're making around the soccer game. It really makes it visual.
And it helps you understand that you can take every situation and put it into another situation, and there are parallels.
Mm-hmm. And where are you in all that? You're the coach on the sideline?
On both sides. So I'm like the coach of my clients, like I am the coach of the soccer team. So you kind of look at the holistic picture and try to take the situation you have and put the best solution in place, but always have a backup in your toolkit if just in case the first one doesn't work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, thanks. It makes it clear what you do. And I understand that you're really working with business leaders. And there's a lot that they need to be looking at that's appearing based on market factors and the changes that we see everywhere.
Yeah, and it can change from day 1 to day 5 to day 15. And as you're working with them in that evolution, those 3 things that we talked about change.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to adapt with it. And the business leaders of today also have to be able to adapt and be versatile.
Mm.
Stuck in the same sandbox and you're not evolving, we'll call that complacency. And we've seen that a lot as well this summer with some of our players sometimes. You don't show up to practice, the game changes and you're not ready to play it. So it's the same thing for the entrepreneurs as well. Yeah, we can have a discussion about selling your company, but if you don't execute the plan and you don't react to those variables, then the value of your company from day 1 to day, I'll say A to Z, is completely different.
Yeah. Wow, thanks for that. Now, I'm curious to know what led you to this career in finance and entrepreneurship. And in parallel, because you're also an athlete, you compete, you're a coach, you're very much involved in, there's a sport mindset there. So getting involved in competitive sports, and what parallels do you find between those two worlds?
2 great questions. I hope I can answer them in one response, but what led me here? I think that's a tough question because there's a lot of things you do. It's like one decision after another that you take in life that leads you somewhere else.
Yeah.
And first of all, the parallel with sports all the way through is that I've always had them in my life. So I've always been able to take a situation and flip it. It's never been, oh yeah, it might seem like a mountain at one day, but once you break it down into the little steps, then the mountain becomes just a little step up the mountain as you're hiking up. And so what led me here? I always say there's a lot of foundational blocks in my life. First of all, I grew up in Newfoundland and in a small town, which is there's pros and cons to that. But for me now, it's only all pros in my head. I had a chance to do everything, like an opportunity to participate in everything from music to sports to politics, like mock parliament, every subject in school. Everything was 2-3 minutes away. It wasn't like you're living in a city and it's an hour or you have to put all your focus. So that means that I became well at everything. Like I can do everything pretty well, but I am not an expert in anything. So those are pros and cons. I left home at 17 to go to university. And I ended up going to a university in Ontario in another small town, but I didn't know anybody. So all of those things kind of broke me out of my shell. And I did study math and economics and finance. And I met a lot of people that changed the trajectory of where you're going to go next, because you have to be open to that. And I'll go back to our conversation. When you look at an athlete who comes in and they say, I'm a striker. And you see them play on the field and you're like, no, you would be much better on the wing. It's the same thing. So you have to be open to those things, and that's being coachable, right? And then another thing that I took advantage of doing a lot in my life is opportunities that took me out of my comfort zone. And so I lived in Costa Rica for a while. I did projects in northern Canada, and I moved to Montreal when I was 30 years old and didn't speak a word of French. So those are things for me that I think that led to where I am now. And I was always going to do something in finance. I was always going to be active, because for me, for anybody that sits inside and spends time plugging away at spreadsheets, as much as I love it, and I do love it, I do love to sit down and have a blank spreadsheet in front of me. It can only last for so long before your mental starts to go a little bit off the rails and you need to change that scenery. And for me, there's nothing easier than putting on a pair of running shoes and going for a quick run. Anybody can do it. And it doesn't have to be a run. It can be just a walk, but you have to change that mindset so that you can come back in and refresh. So how it got me here, a lot of jobs leaving. Sometimes I stayed too long. Sometimes I stayed too short of time, but taking all of those experiences and say, hey, this is in my toolkit now. I have it here forever. And so taking the leap to entrepreneurship was tough. I stayed in one job like 17 years. I couldn't, I did lots of different things in that job, but I couldn't just go from there to where I am now. I had to take another job outside to prove that I could still rebuild myself. And so that was hence the move. There's a move for 3 years in between. And 3 years was the time that it took to say, okay, I have the confidence to do this and I can do it on my own. And so what led me to entrepreneurship maybe 5 years ago, and it was like literally right before COVID. So I could have plunged back out as quickly as I got back in, was really that moment of saying, okay, I have enough tools in my toolbox now that I should try this adventure on my own. And an adventure is like trying out for a team. It's the same thing. It may work, it may not work, and you might end up in another team and it might not look like what you thought it was going to look like, but it's still an adventure and you have the tools to do it. I don't know if I answered both questions at the same time, but I think sports has a parallel to anything. Everything you learn from doing a sport, whether it be a team sport or an individual sport, gives you either physical or mental skills to deal with those situations.
So the knowledge, the agility, right? Keeping yourself constantly out of your comfort zone and just moving into new space.
Yeah, that sounds great what you said. It's a great summary. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and what would you say is your secret to what helped you to get where you're at, to the success that you're having now?
I don't know if it's a secret, but I would say my key to success are those relationships that you build along the way. So you cannot know everything. You can have lots of knowledge in your teams that you build. You can have that entourage around you that you can dig into for inspiration, motivation, collaboration, all of those things. So when someone asks me a question, I don't always know the answer, but I always know someone who knows the answer.
Mm.
And so for me, that is the key to any success. There's no one that can live this life alone.
Mm. That's interesting. So surrounding yourself with
Yeah.
skills and others to complement you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Relationships are key. And, when you see two kids playing in a sandbox and they don't get along very well, and as a parent, you go over and you try to make sure that one is doing one thing and one is doing another thing. That's the first time we learn that we have to learn to share the sandbox.
Mm.
And sounds really simple, but your sandbox just keeps getting larger and larger. So if you can't deal with that one person in your sandbox, you'll have a tough time dealing with others in life. And so
Yeah.
that's the way that I see that.
And if you were to identify a pivotal moment or a key decision that you made in your life, what would that be? Something that defines you as a leader, as a successful person.
I don't know if I actually made those decisions. I guess ultimately it's me that made the decision, but it was always based on key discussions with people in my life. Like I told you, I spent a long time in transactions, and I would have stayed in transactions if the world didn't change around me and we were still doing IPOs. And I think I still would be there. I absolutely loved it. But the world changed, and I had the right leader at the right time who said to me, Susan, why don't you give your hand at leading a team? You would be really good at it. And to me, I'd never thought about it before. And so made that leap. And it was certainly a learning curve. It was not easy, but learned all kinds of things and climbed the tree and then got the bug that, was more success. And you felt more success as a leader than you did with your own success as an individual. And so when you get to that point, it gives you a lot more confidence to move on. And same thing when I jumped into entrepreneurship. I knew I always wanted to do it, but when it was going to happen, I didn't know. And it was really a conversation again, same thing. Lucky enough to have another amazing boss, and we're out for lunch, and he's like, what do you want to do? What's your next step? And he was trying to look for a position for me that took me to the next step in the structure that I was in. And I said, this is what I want to do. And he said, Susan, what's stopping you? What can I do to help you get there? And so again, if I go back to what's key, if I didn't have those two people having those discussions at those specific times, I don't think I would have made those decisions. Like I would probably end up in a different path. It might have been better or worse, who knows? But all of the pivotal decisions that I've made in my life, I've not made alone. I've made it by having discussions. And early on, my mom was that person. And then, later it became other people. But, having trust and confidence in those people is really key, because it could have all turned out wrong.
So there's the strong link between the people and your development and your path, and trust.
Trust is the big word, trust. Because sometimes you trust people, and I'm sure you've been there before, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to learn, and that only comes with experience, like who can you trust and who you can't. And then once you trust someone and it doesn't work out, it's on them. But it takes you a while to realize that it's actually on them and that you've learned from that experience, because you won't make that mistake again, So again, experience also helps you figure out who you can trust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes me think about instinct. You didn't mention instinct, but I kind of feel you have an instinct.
Yeah. And I think instinct also develops from experience.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would say I've been lucky with those instincts too.
Now,
you know what? Luck is a large part of the equation sometimes. It's that thing you can't explain.
yeah.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned leadership, or growing into a leadership role. So when you think about yourself today, what kind of leadership style do you think you embody, both in your career and in sport? And how do you think it has developed over time, and how does it serve you daily?
These are great questions that make me think internally about that, because I always look from the outside, and I read a lot of business and leadership books, and I look from the outside and I look at all of these different styles of leadership, and I would say that I'm just not a natural leader. Um, I I don't know if everybody would agree with that statement, but I'll explain why I would feel that I'm not a natural leader. Um, I feel like I have grown into this role. I've always been extroverted. And so if we're in a group, I'll always offer to be the person that speaks when no one else wants to speak, only because that always seems to be the stumbling block. Who's going to speak? So my thought is there, who's going to speak? You don't have to worry. I'll speak. Let's just work on the project. So because you waste like 30 minutes figuring out who's going to speak, then you're not developing what you need to develop. And so those things, I guess, for me, I think you can absolutely learn to be a leader. I'm going to say this, and you can edit it out if you want, but I don't know a better way to say that. You have to have the balls to do that. And if I can find a better term to say that, but I think everyone will understand when you say to have that is a great balance between courage and skills. So once you're confident in the skills that you have, then you have to have the courage to use them, and knowing that you can fail and it's okay. And so I would say, with all of that said, I would say my style is probably participative. But with the experience that I have, knowing whatever information that I get will work and not work. And then I'll go back to your term, then having the right instinct to say, okay, after getting all the information, here's what we're going to do. And now here's our execution plan. And it's very much formulaic for me. This is why I say it's not necessarily natural, because I take the plan and then it has to be a step-by-step breakdown, and you have to follow up on that afterwards. It's a very process protocol type spreadsheet in my head. So I'll go back to the mathy side of my brain. Everything that I do has to follow like this compartmental order. It's not necessarily, ooh, I'm going to be an inspiration today. It doesn't work that way.
What I've seen, because I've seen you,
We've worked together.
and on the soccer field and the class, and I see a very empathetic leadership. And I would say there's a social side to it. So you talked about relationships and all that. I would say that when you say participatory, yes, and on top of that, you're very caring. And so if you look at sports versus business, do they align well, or how do you sort of differentiate that?
Great question. And I love that you say that I'm caring, because I'm not sure everybody would say that either. I think the role that I had to play in the team that we were on, giving the composition of the team itself, that was the role for me to play. And I can play that role. I can also play the other side of the coin if need be. Again, like it figures out what is the formula to win. And that's what I try to do. I'm not sure what was the question? I kind of got lost in my own.
I thought what I've seen on the field and what you were describing more I'll call it mathematical. How do you align those two styles, I guess?
I think I'll go back into the not the natural part. I'll figure out what pieces of the puzzle that we have and what's missing in the puzzle to create that. And if I need to be that missing piece of the puzzle, and then I'll go back to where I am today, all of those things that I did as a child in Newfoundland and all those different aspects, I can play that role. So if I need to be the good cop, I can be the good cop. And if I need to be the bad cop, I can be the bad cop. If you ask my kids, I think they will tell you this.
Yeah. And you say good cop, bad cop. I'd say probably empathetic and caring, but also I've seen you as a very driven person. So it's not counter. It's whenever the situation requires it.
Yeah, whatever you need to pull out of your toolkit.
Yeah.
But yeah, you saw me in a situation where I worked with, again, like super motivating, because the driven part there was similar to your driven path. I wanted to make sure that my time with those girls on the team, that they gained as much knowledge and life skills to
Hmm.
take them where they needed to go, whether they were on the field or off the field. So it was huge. So when you saw someone that needed, oh, like, oh, girls crying in sport.
Yeah.
Well, boys cry in sport too. So
Yeah.
like that's a load of garbage. But if someone's crying because they cry and they feel that that's the way they're going to get something, it's one thing. When they're crying and they really feel that
Yeah.
hurt, you have to play a different role.
Mm.
And so my passion for that was, oh yeah, I really wanted to win. Trust me, I really wanted to win, but it wasn't at the detriment of those girls learning how to be a team together.
Hmm. Mm. There's a lot more stuff that this evokes. I'll keep it maybe for another conversation or later if there's time. But I want to move on because I want to ask you, many leaders will find inspiration, strength in their personal lives.
Mhm.
And I know that you're an active runner and a skier, you're a coach, you're also an advocate for mental health in sports, which is amazing. You have two kids that are both competitive athletes. So, what lesson have you learned from sport that has transformed the way you lead?
Um, that's a great question, and I don't know if there's any one lesson, but I think it's probably the ability or freedom to fail,
Mm,
and to hit that wall and to try to go past it. And I think that would roll over in every aspect of my life, whether it be business, whether it be raising my kids, whether it be running a marathon, whether it be, there's
yeah.
always at some point, wherever you are, you hit that wall. And if you hit that wall and you give up, then you're not learning anything. If you hit that wall and you try to move past it or visualize past it, then I think that's where you really learn to grow. Um, but quick little story, and marathon runners will know this, but usually a marathon is 42.2
Yep.
kilometers. And usually that wall, if you hit it at 40 and you have 2 kilometers to go, it's 2 kilometers where you're struggling internally, but it's 2 kilometers. So you can do anything in 2 kilometers. Like, let's say you run it even slowly, it's going to be a maximum of 10 minutes a kilometer. You're there in 20 minutes. You can break through that 20 minutes. Well, in 2009, I did a marathon and I hit that wall at 32 kilometers. So I had 10 full kilometers to go. And if I can talk about digging deep into the psyche and the mental fortitude that it takes to get to the finish and everything that goes on in your head, then that's when you know that you're able to do anything.
Mm.
And so 10 kilometers, I said, okay, there's a golf cart going to drive by here anytime and you can hop on it and you're done. There's no way you can walk 10 kilometers. So, Susan, find it in your legs to keep moving and get out of that wall. And, sometimes for 10 kilometers, there are a lot of things that come out and, get you out. There's the kids at the finish line. There's somebody who has this little sign holding up that says, if this was easy, anybody could do it. There's all of those things that go into everything you do. And it's okay to fail. You're going to get there and you can try again.
It's a great story. And we all want to know
Did I
what
finish?
happened. Yeah,
I finished.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
I finished and I probably didn't move for 2 days afterwards. And the only thing I can tell you is I came up and I had that medal across my neck. And I think I must have puked afterwards. I'm pretty
Mhm.
good. But it didn't matter. It didn't matter because it was having that freedom to fail and being okay with it.
Yeah, to push through, to find it in you, to dig deep, and to have the motivation,
Yeah.
internal motivation.
Did I make the time that I was going to make? Hell no, but
Yeah,
that's okay.
yeah,
That's okay.
that's
There's,
okay.
there's a lot of learning in failing.
Yeah, and failing is relative.
Yeah, it's all, yeah, absolutely. It's all relative. That's true. It's such a good point. It is all relative because your failure might be somebody else's win.
Exactly. It's a great story. Now, you and I, we talked about working together. We collaborated on a project that I called Propel, which was meant for girls soccer team to learn global skills. Where I was a mental prep coach. You were the first to manifest an interest and get other coaches and parents to engaged, and you had a huge influence on that group. So why and how do you think it helped you and the team succeed?
This is a really easy question. First of all, Danny, the program that you put together was just amazing, and amazing in the sense that it was probably the most holistic sports program that I've ever been a part of. So lots of technical coaches can go out on a team and show you what the plays are. I can tell you this from any sport you want to choose, whether it's a team sport or an individual sports, there's the technical side. And then it's the same thing. You have the tactical side. And then the third component that
Yeah.
people miss all the time is that mental side. And I'm not talking about, okay, yeah, it's here's the nutrition and here's how much you need to sleep. That's all a part of it as well, which was all a part of your program. But the big missing element there is that mental side. And we did this for the girls, and girls in sport is super important to me as it is to you. Girls tend to fall out of sport around the age of 13 or 14.
Yes.
So my goal with this team from the very beginning was to keep them as long as possible in sport, because the things that they need to survive life usually exist in the sport curriculum after the age of 13 and 14. This is where you learn to become competitive, that you see what you have in yourself, that you learn how to play with teams, that you gain confidence. And this is when girls are leaving sport. So the whole program itself to me was, when you presented it, was music to my ears. I was like, yes, 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 yes. Convincing them was just a question of money, right? So how to do the program itself was a no-brainer, but to be able to afford to have the resources that we need to deliver the program, then that was the question. So this is where we need the whole community to come together and put together a program that was affordable for all of these girls to be able to play. And so, so if you're asking me like how we can convince them and what it did for them, it did so much because they were a part of that solution as well. They know exactly what the program is or was, what they were investing in,
True.
how were they were investing in them, and they were also a part of the solution because part of the funds for the program came from their work.
Mm.
So just there, if nothing else came out of it, just there's all kinds of learnings that they can put in their toolbox for their future. Next, we had a program that took you from where you are now and where you were at the end and all of the things that we did in between. Wow, who gets that in their whole, like, I know you're an athlete and I'm an athlete. No one has ever showed me that whole portrait from A to B in that short of a time. So you can actually see where you are. And then the girls as a team can celebrate together. That the program itself, we have to find a way to scale it and start at a younger age, because wow. If you could put this across Montreal, across Quebec, across Canada, then you have a force of girls in the future that are passionate, determined, know how to put a plan in place, know how to execute, and know how to fail and fail with pride. It to me, there's the learnings there. There's so many of them. There's so many things that us as a team, because we were all a part of it, took from it. And I learned more from those girls than I thought I would have before we started as well.
Yeah, thanks. It's a really amazing perspective that you bring, and you played an important role with them throughout. Your participation and your guidance made a huge impact on those girls, and I think it's a key to the success.
That was my only goal, to have impact on those girls. And so if that's what happened, then
Yeah.
check. Check.
Yeah. Well, maybe you can help me with the scaling of ideas around how to do that, because you're the mastermind behind
Some
that.
ideas. We'll talk.
Now, let me continue. Balancing leadership and your personal life can sometimes be a challenge, but you are able to balance I'll call a high-powered career with significant community involvement in your family life. What strategies help you maintain your focus and your energy in all those areas? And what advice would you give to those who are maybe striving for some balance in their life?
Oh, I wish I could say I had the answer to balance, but I so do not. And if it seems like I have a balanced life, I do not. I have my dog coming to say hello. I have a couple of tools maybe to make it seem like I have that. Time management is a big one, like blocking time, and then prioritizing where to block time. So again, every Sunday night, I'll sit down with what I have to do and I write it all on a handwritten paper. And then I figure out all the things that are easy to do and get off my list right away, and I'll do them Sunday night. And then the bigger things, I put them in time blocks throughout the week. So some things don't get done, and sometimes there's dishes that stay in my sink a day too long. But I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay to be okay with that. And I would say that as a child, I was probably pretty much a neat freak, and I still am. And I'm sure my kids would say that, but I'm okay with that. And I've learned to be okay with things that might not add up.
Mhm. So you make space for your priorities and you accept that some things may not be 100% all the time.
Yeah, and I'd love to say it's that black and white, but it isn't.
Mm.
It really isn't. Sometimes I'm out and like the only thing that I would say that I religiously do, and it doesn't matter if it's a priority because it's my number one priority, is that I have to get out every day. I for sure at least walk, run, hike, ski at least 5 to 10 kilometers a day. And that is just not a question. It's just there. And that helps me with my physical, it helps
Mm.
with my mental. And it gives me, I told you, I listen to a million podcasts, and this is where I do it. I don't really care if there's anyone with me. I actually prefer to be alone, because it helps me compartmentalize that internal spreadsheet.
Mm. So active in different types of ways, but it's your space, your private space, and it's important. Okay, now I want to talk about the future a little bit.
Sure.
How can leadership, mental health, and wellness education evolve, do you think, to better prepare the next generation of athletes and leaders?
Uh, so this is a great question as well, and something that I'm passionate about answering, because as you know, I'll do a little plug for my
Yes.
foundation, which is a foundation called Head to Core. And it was started by me and my friend and partner Joanne Rossi, and it's better mental health through sport. And so again, I told you the one thing that I don't give up in all of those priorities is to make sure that I get outside, and inside is okay as well, but outside is also very important. So it's that's the wellness part for me. And then the physical activity part, it's again the science of what goes on in your brain to help you balance that mental fortitude and to continue with everything. And so if I'm talking about leadership, and I'm going to say something that I know you had someone on with AI, I love the smartphone, but I think that our kids and future generations are going to have a hard time managing what that means to them. They get lost in it, they ignore what happens, and they don't move forward. So that whole thing about bringing sport in your day-to-day life and getting rid of that constant rolling of a telephone or smartphone in your head is going to be imperative for future athletes, for future leaders, for our future in general. Like there's got to be a way, a target that takes that phone away or that tablet away from them, because I can tell you, and I can already see it right now, they don't deal with problems. Do you know what they do? They scroll through TikTok or whatever it is. 2 hours pass. Now your eyes are tired because you've been looking at a screen for 2 hours, and you go to sleep with those images rolling in your head. And the issue that you had has never been dealt with. So the wellness part has to be a part of the equation. The exercise part has to be a part of the equation. The nutrition part has to be a part of the equation. And that sleep part has to be a part of the equation. Danny, like, doesn't that sound like Propel?
Yes. How do we make it happen? How do we influence that?
So we've started that journey, and we have this test and this data from this team that we tried it on this summer. And now you have to take on the next step and create that scale. And I don't pretend to know how all of the answers of how to do that, but I certainly know that it needs to happen and the next process that we have to take to do so. And it means bringing in other expertise that are not yours and that are not mine, but someone that knows about scale.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going back to relationships, like, that needs to be the future, and it needs to start at a younger age, in my opinion. Like, it was great to do it with these girls that were there, but like, imagine if you get them on the precipice of, and I mean, this can work with boys too. It's just girls happen to leave sport at 13 or 14.
Mm-hmm.
Girls happen to mature a little bit earlier than boys. So maybe the timing for girls and boys might be off, but I think this program, if you can get this in schools, if you can get this in associations, and maybe it's a one step at a time type thing. We have it in one team and one organization. I'm sure we can try it, across the board somehow and get more data about how it happens. And then, it becomes a whole franchise and train of thought about how we look at this. But it has to happen, and it's urgent.
Mm-hmm.
And it's urgent. It's now. This is the time. Like, if we wait 5 years, we've already lost a generation of kids to that.
And with AI accelerating, it's important to get back to I'll call it the basics.
Yeah.
I'm already at my last question, Susan.
Well, this is great to pass quickly.
So I'd like to leave the audience with reflection. So what's one thing you'd like them to reflect on when it comes to their own leadership and journey, or their life and wellness?
I think about this a lot in terms of myself, in terms of the team that we guided this summer, in terms of the companies that I help through whatever transition they're going to. And if you're reflecting or internally reflecting on what it is to always be open to that next learning event.
Mm-hmm.
When it's, I guess, kind of to simplistic form, is to be coachable.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you don't have all the answers, and it's impossible for you to be able to learn everything this world has to offer. And there's some people that are much better at things than you are. And to have confidence and to trust and to develop those relationships and nourish them, it can be a job in itself. So again, have fun with what you're doing. And if you don't have a dream, try lots of different things and figure out what you like doing, because once you like doing something, it becomes really easy. It becomes really easy. And I kind of wish that someone would have said that to my younger self. I wish that my path had not been like carved out, and I kind of created some things on my own, but I never felt when I was younger that I had flexibility to step outside what was the momentum plan for me. And I just, stepping outside sometimes creates beautiful things. And I think that's the reflection that I would leave anybody. Like, even when you start a business, you start and you're so open as an entrepreneur to all these ideas, but after doing the same thing for 20 years, you're not open anymore. This is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at any age you can do that. You can do it at 5, you can do it at 17, you can do it at 60. Step outside that box, step outside your comfort zone, dream big, try lots of new things.
A lot of very interesting things.
That's a lot of reflections, but just try stuff. Love what you do.
Love what you do. We'll go back to heart, head to core. It's all about the heart, the head, being aligned, and just love what you do.
Love what you do.
Oh, Suzanne, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for agreeing to answer all my questions and share your secrets and insights and your amazing career. Thank you.
You're very, very welcome. It was such a pleasure, and thank you for asking me those questions. I think I have to go for a walk and digest all that. Thanks,
Well, have
Danny.
a great rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you.
In this energizing conversation, Susan shares how her leadership journey has been shaped by embracing opportunities outside her comfort zone, people who have influenced her trajectory, and being coachable. The secret to her success: relationships. The connections she has built along the way, ones that complement her knowledge and bring motivation, inspiration, and collaboration. As a lifelong athlete, coach, and parent of two competitive athletes, Susan credits sports for teaching her the freedom to fail, embracing setbacks as part of growth, and the persistence to push through when she hits a wall. Resilience, learning from failure, and adapting are skills she carries into all aspects of her life. While she believes leadership doesn't come naturally to her, she has learned to step up with confidence and courage when needed, leveraging her participative and situational leadership style to each challenge. As a co-founder of Head to Core, Susan is a strong advocate for mental wellness, emphasizing the vital role of physical activity in maintaining both mental and physical well-being. Daily movement is a priority for her. She acknowledges that balance isn't easy, but believes in organizing her priorities weekly, accepting it won't always be perfect, but ensuring she stays focused on what truly matters. She also draws insightful parallels between financial leadership and sports strategy, highlighting the importance of bench strength, adaptability to economic forces, and resilience in the face of unexpected disruptions. Looking ahead, Susan is passionate about equipping young people, especially girls, with holistic skills beyond the screen, fostering resilience, problem solving, and real world readiness. Her advice: always be open to learning, be coachable, try new things, and most importantly, love what you do. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Peak Talent. If this conversation inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Our goal is to bring you insightful conversations that shed new light on your journey in leadership, while uncovering the contagious inspiration of surpassing yourself.